And this is William Hopkins, writer and director of Demon Resurrection. I'm going to be talking about the movie. I'm joined by the co-producer of the film, Edward Wheeler. Hello, Ed.
Hi, Bill. How you doing?
Good of you to join me.
Absolutely.
Ed was the co-producer on the film, and he was also one of the actors in the film. He played the archaeologist in this opening sequence that's about to come up. And you also were, what was your title? Stunt coordinator or stunt?
Sure.
Yeah, that's your
stunt
what do we use
coordinator.
in the credits?
I think it was stunt coordinator.
Stunt coordinator. And you were also one of the stuntmen, along with this young lady, Caroline Adams.
Right.
And Laurie Miller, who plays Kate in the film, also did some of the stunt work. And Jerry Woods, who was one of our crew.
Right.
This opening sequence was actually shot about a year, I guess, after the rest of the principal photography was completed. We decided that we needed something to run the credits over, and by that point the original location had been sold and we didn't have access to it any longer, and the pit of the archaeological dig was long since filled in. So we recreated this on the patio of an apartment in the Bronx, which is about as far away from where we were originally shooting as you can get, I guess. And since the layer of sand is only about an inch thick in some of those long shots, we had to mat the skulls into the shot so that it would look like Caroline was encountering these ancient skulls and skeletons. And I think it works pretty well. What do you think?
I think you did a good job of combining those shots, inserting the different, I mean, that's actually that's the pit that we made?
That's the pit we made, yeah. A couple of planks with some sand put on it. And there's Ed.
And now we cut to Long Island.
Yeah, this is the Long Island shoot. And this, I guess, was one of the sequences that was shot towards the end of the film, right? Towards the end of our...
The last thing we shot was on this location. All the last sequences of the film.
There's Joe Zazzo playing Tilth's assistant. And the limousine was actually something that we were fortunate that the fellow who was renting us housing for our actors when we were shooting up in Long Island also owned this, I guess would be considered a vintage limousine.
Right. And originally the limousine was going to play a much larger role in the end of the film.
That's right.
That got changed around, thank God.
These are the pits that Frank Siller actually dug. I think you helped him dig these.
Yeah. That was a big pit. We moved a lot of dirt.
And this was the property that Frank owned in Long Island, which was sold after we finished the principal photography.
Right. And there was actually a lake that we never show that was filled with frogs, and those frogs made noise.
Which added to the sound problems.
Right. Constantly.
And I guess Will McDonald, who we see here playing Toth, was the senior member of our cast. I think just about everybody else was in their early to mid 20s, some in their early to mid 30s. But Will was certainly a game fellow. He was out there doing the final sequences of the film in the pit.
I think Will really enjoyed himself.
He seemed to, yeah.
He was up for just about anything.
Mm-hmm. And he brings a certain charm to the part that sort of puts me in mind of people like Vincent Price and Boris Karloff, the old style horror film actors.
Right. That was a tough thing for us to cast. We saw a lot of people, and just no one captured. No one seemed to capture what you were looking for as far as the part goes, to bring some elegance and some weight to the film, especially to counterbalance all this youth.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's really what we were looking for. We made the mistake on our previous film of casting a young person to play the villain, and as good an actor as he was, it just didn't work because you need somebody who has the experience of years right on their face.
Now right there it might look like I'm dead, but oh.
You come back for a second go around later on. Come back just in time to get killed.
Right.
And here Will is looking off into the distance, and we see a composition of different Photoshop images to look like the house, John's house.
Getting the geography right, like where the cemetery is or where the dead bodies are in comparison to where the house was, you know, laying that kind of stuff out was a challenge. Like how far of a drive is it from the pit to the house? And
well, we fudged it a little bit, I think. We
right.
played fast and loose with some of the geography.
Right.
It's also a much bigger house than it appears. We only used one part of it.
Right.
It was almost like a separate wing where there was a whole family of folks living.
Right.
And that created all sorts of problems with power usage. Every time somebody turned on a microwave or TV set.
Right. And we'll really see that become a problem in the night scenes when we're shooting outside because we had to use so much electricity.
That's the big challenge with shooting anything at night, and instead of doing day for night shooting, is that you have to actually light a lot of stuff, and you have to use a lot of electricity.
Yeah, or at night you have to drag all the equipment outside.
Yeah.
You know, and it was getting towards the end of summer, so the dew was starting and the equipment was getting wet. It was a challenge.
That's right, that was a regular routine. Have to
wiping down all the equipment,
everything.
All the power cords getting damp.
And that's always a good combination of like cables lying around soaking wet.
Oh yeah. And here you really see some of the problems as far as shooting in the daylight. We had the really harsh, bright sunlight, unfiltered. There's no way for us to block it. And as you can see, just through the course of shooting, the sun's going down.
Right.
So it gives us a completely different lighting quality. I'm seeing Bashir back there. It's
even shadows.
Pretty much in the dark, and that's not the way we started shooting the scene.
Yeah, we were sort of racing against the sun.
We were always racing against the sun.
It seemed that way, yeah. Well, we didn't do any outdoor daytime shooting in our first film. The previous film that we had done was Sleepless Nights, and that was all at night, almost all indoors, and in fairly dark surroundings. So this was the first time for us to actually be shooting outdoors.
Which has its benefits, but it also has its own kinds of challenges.
Well, a shot like that, I think, is beautiful.
Oh, absolutely. It's filtered through the trees. It's beautiful stuff, but with the sun a little bit higher or just a little bit lower, it
causes problems,
yeah.
Alexis Golightly, our lead actress, a terrific actress, very talented, and it was an excellent experience working with her. Very professional and certainly went beyond the call of duty in many instances. That window in the background was actually put in by us. We had to do a certain amount of modification to the location. We put in the barricades on the windows, and that stained glass window was put in by us.
Shooting in a house that people were actually living in created, it was a logistical nightmare at times, and we couldn't do the work on the house that we wanted to. So how do you bar the windows of a house that
people are actually
living in? And
make yourselves at home.
Stuck in this place, no wonder she ended up on the dope.
This was the room that I assume the two people who own the house were using as their bedroom.
The master bedroom, yeah.
So we had to schedule all the scenes that took place in this bedroom for the first week, so that we could finish up in there and allow these people to get back into their bedroom.
Right.
And that certainly put pressure on Alexis too, because some pretty grueling stuff that she had to do.
Right. some of the shots in that room I really enjoy. You got some of the objects in the foreground, you know, the light coming through the window. I thought that was really nice.
This is what he's into.
Yeah, he's supposedly some sort of an expert on the subject. Wrote a few books on it.
I don't remember Grace ever saying she's interested in any of this stuff.
No, I don't think she was, until she met him.
Last time I spoke with her, she said she was helping him with his research.
Yeah, right. Research.
Now, this was one of the first scenes that we shot. We actually had to shoot this twice, right? Because of sound issues that we actually had to go back and on a film with as tight of a schedule as we had, to have to reshoot something is
Yeah, we reshot
something you want to try to avoid.
this sequence, and we reshot one of the sequences with Amanda in the same room. And I think what happened was we took a break. We took a day or two break after the first 4 days or so of shooting, and I went back to my home and reviewed the footage that we had shot and did a little weeping. And then when we went back to work, you know, we tried to correct some of the problems that were coming up, and we reshot those two sequences because the sound problems were particularly bad.
Laurie was amazing too. It was great having people on set that would be willing to step outside their normal role and do everything from, you know, fix lunch
Yeah,
to move sandbags.
Laurie in particular, because Laurie was, you know, grappling with the job of playing one of the lead characters, and in addition to that, was also doing stunt work
and commuting from White Plains,
right, so she really
above New York.
did quite a bit.
She did. That's another inserted shot a year and a half afterwards,
hand,
right?
Considering all the stuff that's going on since I left, I think I was wise to get out and do it. But at least to get to where
When we were first sitting down talking about the script, originally it was going to be a real run and gun. You know, we were going to be shooting, I don't want to say film noir, but you know, it was going to be
verite
right,
approach or a dogma.
you know, very, you know, shadowy, and if something's in the dark, then we let it be in the dark. And I don't know, I guess we just got sidetracked into lighting everything as well as we could.
Good. That's nice.
Well, I think also, you know, that's always a decision that you have to make when you're getting ready to shoot something like this. Our initial impulse was, we're shooting it on digital video, let's do it in sort of Blair Witch style. But when I saw the way the zombie costumes were coming out, you know, I liked how they came out, but they were clearly artificial. They weren't realistic enough to fit into that sort of gritty cinema verite style. So we moved, I think, a little bit more towards sort of a retro 70s, you know, studio film look. I suppose I was looking back towards Roger Corman's films, his Edgar Allan Poe movies that he did for American International, and Hammer's films from the, I guess they were around from the 50s right up until the 70s. And this film really has, it's probably an appropriate model to use, because this film really is like a combination of a Hammer movie and a zombie movie like Night of the Living Dead. The first half hour or so is a Hammer-esque melodrama, and the final 40 minutes or so are more visceral, more in the style of Night of the Living Dead or any of the other zombie movies.
I was just supposed to be helping John with his research to these obscure cults. Like crazy.
I think when you make a decision to put one professional light on the set, you have to go the whole route. You can't do it in half measures. because it just, everything becomes artificial, and then it becomes a question of managing the degree to which it's artificial and trying to make the whole thing work.
Right. Well, it was a miracle that, you know, that we got we shot as many pages as we did per day, given the lighting setups and everything. You know, that was.
And I got the impression that as we were getting towards the end of the shoot, that we were getting it down to the extent that if we wanted to, we probably could have kept shooting and had another movie. And in this case, the rain, we made an attempt to do rain on set, and the wind was blowing rain across horizontally. It didn't look right, so we ended up shooting the scene dry and then adding the rain in post. This whole sequence was actually done with just myself and the two actors. I thought it might be good, given the nature of the scene, that we allow them to develop a sense of intimacy, and that's kind of hard to do when you have a bunch of people standing around watching you. So, and I think it worked well. I think it's a pretty good scene. And I have to give kudos to the actors, because here they are carrying a film and doing fairly grueling action scenes, and also doing love scenes like this.
Right. Well, they look fantastic, you know. They weren't shy about it, which was, we were very lucky that they were confident and professional.
And they worked well as a couple on screen.
Right.
But I thought it was important to have, a lot of people might look at a sequence like this and say, well, this is just gratuitous sex scene. But I thought it was important that we see them together in this sort of intimate situation.
And healthy.
Yeah.
You know, they have a healthy relationship.
Exactly, right.
Because things get unhealthy really quick.
Right. And not too long after this, there's another fairly explicit scene, and it isn't quite as pleasant.
Right. Well, I would say sometimes we were almost too sensitive to the actors' needs, because I think it slowed us up at times, you know, trying to make sure that everyone was as comfortable as possible.
Well, I don't know if it, I suppose that those sort of considerations are better for movies that have substantial budgets. They can afford to cater to the performers more, but you know, to the extent that we can do it, to the extent that we can make people comfortable and hopefully allow them to give a better performance as a result. You know?
Yeah, you did it. You got the shot.
Yeah.
I think the scene works very well. I think it's a beautiful scene, as far as like a lovemaking scene, seeing two people really enjoying each other. I think it's fantastic. There's definitely a depth here, a depth to this film. You know, layers to the characters and how they relate to each other. And if you really take apart the film, you know, every character's line has some little commentary about something larger. I mean, originally you wrote the script in maybe not response to 9/11.
Well, in the aftermath of that, I think everybody was surprised to find that their tastes in entertainment were not what we expected. I guess right after 9/11, everybody assumed that violent movies, horror films, would be a thing of the past. And actually, sort of similar to what happened in Japan after the Second World War, after the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Godzilla was an enormous success, probably because it allowed people to work out whatever unspoken feelings they had about the war and about those catastrophic events.
Right.
I don't know if obviously our film is not going to achieve that sort of degree of success or visibility, but right when I was writing it, there were a lot of pretty strong horror films coming out, and that's been the case since. So initially I was thinking of going in the direction of making something that would be very, very violent and very visceral. And I guess as I was writing the script, it tended back towards more story-driven things. My inspiration shifted from fairly explicit and visceral zombie movies to the Corman Poe films and the Hammer films.
In that previous scene, we saw another one of those challenges as far as shooting in, broad daylight,
Right.
moving from shadow to light. I thought that was.
Yeah, and the actors were out in the sun and over a campfire.
Right.
So it was unpleasant for them as well.
Right.
I mean, I like that.
Alexis really does have some wonderful subtlety, and she can.
She played it just the way it should be played.
Right. You can see her trying to pull back that harder emotion, instead of just hitting the nail on the head, and being, and overdoing it. You can see her trying to hold herself back, which I think is what people do.
Well, I think
There's
somebody
Shelley Allen, and these are all friends, and
Dan Almakinder, who we
Right.
just saw, was one of the lead zombies. He got an opportunity to appear in his normal human guise here.
Right.
I don't know if they put in that.
And just about everyone who showed up that day helped us build the cult compound. I don't remember where the original location was supposed to be, but we all put in some extra time, and
it worked much better than anything we could have
Oh, right.
come up with. In the original script, it was supposed to take place in a dungeon. So
Right.
Unfortunately, there aren't too many dungeons to be had in Long Island. And what we ended up with, I think, worked much better.
Stood upon their feet.
I like the effects you added here. Filters
And these
I was
bones,
trying to give it a little bit of a dreamy quality.
can that which is past and gone be resurrected? Be returned to its former glory?
It was great. I mean, she really did go ragdoll on them. They really had to hold her up.
Yeah.
She really gets into her part. She really commits herself.
I think Will had to ask her to
Kind of.
commit herself. She's having a bit of difficulty holding her up.
Right.
There's this coming sequence now. I guess this sequence was the
Must
last,
have been a conscious
the very
power
last
because
couple of nights that we shot.
It was nighttime.
People were exhausted. Getting those torches right, that was.
Little things like that can add enormously to the
Right.
look of the film. Really, and that's something we couldn't have done if we were indoors.
Right.
But it just it makes for a much more visually interesting scene. And this looks like it could have come out of any number of 70s horror films.
At first, I thought
Okay. wall in the back was actually built by Ed and Laurie and
Shelley.
and a bunch of other folks who pitched in, and it was done the day we shot this.
And it's attached to the back of a metal shed just for structure, just for structural purposes.
And I don't know if his branding iron should be actually on fire, but it looks nicer.
All right. And we did that with, well, that's Bill's special effects work there, but
Yeah, a little bit of animation.
the fire was maintained on the brazier with a little bit of rubber cement.
Rubber cement always works well.
Right. The brazier in the back was actually gas that we rigged.
When I woke up, I saw that.
And that's those streamers that we saw were Joe Zazzo's loincloth.
I couldn't get up.
We didn't realize it, but he had brought some material to the set to use as a loincloth, and when we were putting together this set, we grabbed it up and used it for those streamers to create it like a maypole, and Joe had to find some other material to make a loincloth out of. I think the red is probably better than the white anyway for a loincloth.
Now, this is a pretty disturbing scene.
Well, horror movies have to be disturbing on some level. I mean, obviously, there are many horror films that are being made nowadays and have been made in the past that are far more explicit and far more disturbing. I imagine that probably most people would find this fairly mild in comparison to some of the stuff that's being done nowadays.
True enough.
If the context was different, if it was a story about a bunch of, you know, thugs dragging a girl behind the bushes to rape her, then probably this would be considered unacceptable. But such a fantastic situation and completely impossible to imitate or replicate.
Right. And that was actually probably the very last. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. Everyone, it was cold because it was probably early October, the beginning of October at that point, out in the middle of the woods. And
the funny thing was that Alexis screamed and writhed for probably a half hour as we did different takes, and none of the neighbors, any of the surrounding properties, called the police. Perfectly happy to just observe from a distance. We shot several days in the master bedroom and several days in this guest bedroom. And one of the problems that we faced was that we were recording our video right to a hard drive. We had the camera running, the laptop running, and the hard drive running. And the whine that these pieces of equipment made was audible on the soundtrack, and that was a real pain in the neck to try to eliminate. Some scenes in the film where we weren't able to eliminate it. Wouldn't have been an issue, and it wasn't an issue when we were shooting in larger rooms or when we were shooting outdoors, but certainly became a problem in shooting in these very closed, small, enclosed spaces.
I love the little detail, you know, her hand is shaking, right, you know, it's good stuff. Good stuff. She's got her 100-yard stare there.
That's my hand again.
And the grimoire.
We shot those inserts many months or more than a year after.
Into another dimension. They remained ever since.
The fire in the foreground has been supplemented. That's been added in. A little bit of smoke as well.
The location was beautiful. The problem the location brought was that it really was in the middle of nowhere, and we were lucky that we found a house that we could rent and house the actors in instead of shipping them all back to New York every night.
That's the trade-off, right? You find a great location, but you got to spend 2 hours every day traveling to it.
that blood knife got a lot of use this shoot.
And the staff was actually carved by you, I believe.
And the grimoire was me
That's
too.
right, you created the grimoire. My brother created the illustrations inside of it.
Little extra smoke right there.
Yeah, we added to the flame and added to the smoke on all of those shots. Really.
This was actually Bill picked up their conversation just talking on their own, right?
Just to get some impromptu conversation. I just videotaped them while they were preparing for a scene.
Right.
They weren't aware, I don't think, that the camera was on.
Interesting work.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Of course, we got hit pretty hard when the dot-com bubble burst.
And Stephanie did a terrific job. I think she's quite good.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And another really very professional in her behavior and a real trooper. She put up with a lot.
Well, I think everyone's pretty excited about being involved with this. I mean, how often do you get to do something like this, you know?
It's true.
And it was really great that we could actually pay them something along the way, you know, that, you know, they weren't doing this for free. We were able to compensate them at least a little bit.
Well, it was certainly unusual to have a cast of actors that were being put through this much trouble, who were so pleasant and enthusiastic about the whole thing. They seemed to enjoy it. Of course, I don't know. That's just what they told me. I don't know what they were saying about me.
Well, I think it's testimony to the script. I mean, they all knew what they were getting into. You know, it's not like, you know, we fooled them. You know, they were excited about being a part of it, and I think because of that, they were willing to maybe work a little bit longer, work for a little bit less money.
I think also the approach we took in casting this film was different from our previous film. In the previous film, the producer wanted to have as professional an approach to things as possible, but it meant some of the actors thinking that they're getting involved in a production that was a little more expensive.
Right, and that's death once you actually get on set and you find out that that's not what the situation is.
Right, they think they're getting involved with a production that maybe is a couple $100,000, and they arrive on set and they're in somebody's living room with some joker like me shooting them with a handheld camcorder, and the illusion of being involved in a professional production goes right out the window. And then, of course, when there's any delays or, you know, if they're inconvenienced at all, their, you know, tempers flare very easily.
Right.
These folks, we let them know right at the start that this was a very, very low budget production, and that they were going to be inconvenienced, they were going to be uncomfortable, and, you know, it'd be a lot of long hours. And
You all came out here because you thought Grace was in danger and you wanted to help.
the goal here obviously was to make something that was entertaining, and
You're right.
you know, if it isn't that, then I guess we can't consider it a success. But I think that there's an audience for this. I think there are probably plenty of people that are nostalgic for films with this sort of feel. And
well, I also hope that people see that, you know, this isn't just something that we threw together.
Right.
You know, whatever the shortcomings of the film may be, you know, everyone involved had their heart and soul and frequently blood, sweat, and tears involved with this. You know, just the pre-production alone, you know, for weeks at a time, building the zombie outfits,
right.
You know, doing the slosh molding for the zombie parts, you know, putting together the costumes, making those kinds of props.
That went on, you know, from spring to just before we started shooting.
The location, you know, the location shooting, the location scouting. You know, that was, you know, no small endeavor. And then the logistical challenges of trying to get people back and forth to the city, and then the shooting schedule as far as, you know, who can spend the night at actor housing, who needs to go back, who actually has a day job they need to return to. You know, all films take a lot of planning, but, you know, there was a lot of heart put into this by everyone involved.
This probably for production that it was as cheap as this in terms of the budget. This was probably more elaborate than it should have been, because we were shooting on a budget that was roughly equivalent to the budget of a film like Blair Witch, which didn't have any special effects or any special props or sets or anything that would have added to the budget. In our case, we had all of that. We had a large cast, 13, 14 people. We had, in addition to that, we had to keep a crowd of folks around to play the zombies. There's another 5 to 10 people.
We were out on location. We weren't shooting close to a city. We did a lot of things that probably indie filmmaker 101 would say you don't do.
Make no mistake, though, my friend.
But I think the end result is reasonably entertaining, and I think it certainly, if we just go by a comparison to our previous film, there's just an enormous improvement in every respect. The picture is, more vivid and sharper, and the acting is uniformly better, I think, and it's just a more entertaining film. It's got stuff in it that people actually might want to see.
Well, I think you also know your film. You know your films. You knew what you were going after. You knew the look that you wanted. The script was, well thought out.
And I'm sure there's probably a lot of people that would dismiss it. There's a lot of folks that they hear the words low-budget horror film and they dismiss it immediately. So I know we're not going to be getting any Oscar nominations, but it was just an attempt to try to take advantage of the location, try to take advantage of the actors that we had, and create something that would be an entertaining diversion for 90 minutes.
The not quite correct CPR sequence.
Yeah, well, they changed the CPR rules right after we shot this, I think. It was
Well, we called a nurse that I knew just to make sure that we were doing it right.
Well, it was the right way to do it up until we shot. Of course, he doesn't recover from this, so maybe that means it's the wrong way to do it.
Well, his heart exploded through demonic presence.
This is the what the emergency room workers call a widowmaker heart attack. It's a massive heart attack that pretty much kills you instantly.
I like how you could see the veins on the side of his head.
He plays dead good, I think. He got the glassy stare.
Right.
And everybody did pretty well on this. The sequences like this, I would imagine, on a studio film, could be a couple of days worth of shooting. And we
knocked this out in 30 seconds.
Well, it wasn't quite that, but it was no more than 2 hours, I think, for the whole sequence. Might not have even been that. But that's not a choice. Obviously, if we had had the ability to shoot.
That's a beautiful shot.
That's nice. Yeah. We would have preferred to shoot longer, but we were on a very tight schedule. A lot of these things that we're saying, I imagine, are kind of cliches in these kind of commentaries, particularly for low-budget horror films.
Right. Well, I think the idea that we were able to knock out about 5 pages a day consistently, and that included doing a couple of reshoots, just to pat ourselves on the back, I guess.
Yeah. And we got acceptable quality material. And this film was actually shot prior to the introduction of a lot of the readily available high-definition cameras and equipment that would be used now. If we had shot this a couple of years later, we probably would have shot it in high def. But at the time, the best way to go, it seemed, was to shoot it in standard def 4:3, full screen. And
well, at the time, there wasn't even an affordable prosumer camera that could shoot.
Right. Yeah.
16:9.
We shot this prior to the introduction of that. And of course, for me, what I'm thinking of with these films, the films I'm referring to were films that I saw as a kid on TV, and local TV channels would run horror movies late at night, Chiller Theater or creature features, and of course they always showed the films in full screen. So I guess that unintentionally perhaps is what I was aiming for.
What do you look like to you?
But the image is pretty good, I think. I don't think we can be faulted for
The equipment we had to work on.
Yeah, considering the budget, considering the equipment, and the resources we had at our disposal, it looks pretty good.
There she is. Spreads her legs for everybody. All I'm saying is that guy said be out of here by sundown.
We're not gonna run out of here and leave my friends.
Your friends are mixed up in some dangerous shit, Barbara.
I suppose
Corpse upstairs.
maybe younger folks, modern audience, would be a little put off by the idea of holding the zombies in reserve for 40 minutes. That probably wouldn't be the way a lot of people would do a film like this. They would have the zombies and the bloodletting starting at frame 1 and continuing right through to the end credits.
Well, I like that there's, you have to have some patience with a film like this, and that there is a payoff, that, the film does pick up pace, and more elements keep being added as time goes on, And hopefully the idea is when some people start getting knocked off, it means something.
Right.
That you've identified with the character, hopefully, and then now here's another insert shot that was done on that same deck in the Bronx a year later.
Yeah, for us the priority was to get the footage with the live action footage with the actors done. So we put off all of this stuff until much later. I think it cuts together pretty well.
Oh yeah.
If we had had more money, we could have had more zombies. Perhaps that would have made it a more spectacular shot. But
well, asking people to, put on those outfits, it was not comfortable. Putting those masks on was very difficult. We didn't want to be able to see their eyes through the eye holes, so it was very difficult for them to see, breathe, move.
It was an unpleasant thing, no question about it, and that's why we had so much changeover between people playing the zombies.
You just can't ask people to go do that too often.
Being out in the woods at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, wearing a bucket on your head and a bunch of canvas robes with mosquitoes going after you.
And we try to keep everything clean. We would wipe them out with alcohol after every use, but
they got pretty ripe.
Yeah, they got.
And no facilities on the location for people to shower because with the number of people that we had there, we couldn't ask our hosts to allow them to make use of the bathroom. So there was a portable toilet in the yard, but otherwise everybody had to wait until they got back home.
We had some fantastic, makeup done, but
That's right.
we just couldn't Ashley
Benatar.
Benatar
Was our...
we got her we had hired someone, and we're not going to say names, but at the last minute, he got a better paying job and left us hanging a week before shooting without a makeup artist.
Right.
So we had to do this scramble, and Ashley came through for us.
Her first feature film, I think she was 19 or 20 years old.
And
she was brought on to do the beauty makeup primarily.
Right.
And she did a terrific job. When you think about some of the scenes, we had maybe 5 or 10 people, all of whom had to be made up and had to have their hair done. And she was the only person doing it. And in addition to that, she also contributed some of the gore effects.
Well, and it was also just keeping, once the action really takes place,
right.
Who has a ripped shirt where? Who should be sweating right now? Keeping the wounds moist, which is a pleasant idea. All of a sudden it became this continuity thing that she had to keep track of.
Especially since we're shooting out of sequence.
Right.
So.
And Bashir was fantastic. He actually kept a water bottle next to him on set the entire time, so he kept on wetting himself down with sweat, which was...
Yeah. We'll be clearing out soon.
Bashir Shalebo is the other of the 4 leads. He's present on the screen for quite a bit of the film, and did a terrific job, I think.
Where the hell are you?
Very good in the action as well, especially in some of the scenes where he's jumping out of that second floor window. And
he was so excited to do those action scenes.
I guess that's the fun of doing a horror movie, is to actually get your hair mussed.
Make sure she gets out of here, okay, right? Yeah, we'll take care of her. Okay. Bye.
All right. At least we got some light. Did you? No.
Oh, this was a tough night.
Yes, this coming sequence was a difficult night in terms of logistics, I guess you'd say.
There were a few nights that we worked the cast in 2 shifts, where one group would come in in the morning, and we would work with them during the day, and then we would plan out a shot sequence at night that needed a different group of actors. And there were a few times that the crew actually worked 24 hours. That I remember we were on set at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, and by the time we got back to try to watch the rushes, the sun was up. It was 7 o'clock in the morning again. We were actually shooting for 24 hours, and then you push back shooting till you can't push it back that far. You're going to ruin, you're going to go off schedule. Then we're back on set by like 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon to get ready for that night's shoot. So even though we talk about, we shot for 21, 22 days over a 31-day period, some of those days were
full 24.
Full 24, those double shifts. Most of the shots that you're seeing now, we shot once, and we had to move on. Maybe we shot it twice, right?
Well, that particular, and there's a continuity error there. When he gets out of the car and opens the hood, the headlights are off. It's not something that could be fixed, but yeah, we were shooting so quickly that it really was just one take for a lot of that stuff, and going back and trying to fix it in post, try to correct whatever lighting problems or sound problems. I think for all of that stuff outdoors, with Chad and Amanda playing Barbara and Michael, the first demon attack, that was all done without any sound. We didn't have, we were moving so quickly it didn't even make sense to try to record sync sound.
Right. And this was also one of the first night sequences out, I think. we didn't have the power sources mapped out correctly, so we kept on blowing fuses.
Right. That's why some of this really pretty dark,
Right.
pretty grainy.
And we also had to carry the lights so far out because we couldn't afford a generator. So we had the stingers going way out into the woods, and then we would get the lights up into trees or extend C-stands as high as they could go to try to make it look like those security lights, but we just could not dump enough light onto the scene, and I guess you are seeing a lot of grain because of that.
Yeah, we had to bump up the brightness of the picture considerably to make it an acceptable quality.
What is it? What's happening?
Also, one of these scenes here, we were moving so quickly that we came close to having an injury when
So David Godby got bonked in the head.
headbutt
Right.
butted by Amanda when she
right.
stood up too fast, and he's playing one of the demons, one of the zombies, and I thought for sure that he would. I guess that maybe those zombie masks offer some protection. It's certainly
A crash helmet.
yeah.
So, and Miss Benatar also made the fake guts as well.
Right.
Yes.
Augmented slightly by some post-production
Right.
opticals. And you can see the shadow of the camera on the zombie in one of those shots.
What's interesting is David, the guy who just swiped, man, that helmet isn't even on him. He's actually, his eyes are near the mouth someplace somehow. We couldn't get the helmet all the way on him. This was a fantastic find, this barn that we actually was on the property back a ways.
Right. It's one of the instances where we rewrote the script to take advantage of something that was on the available at the location.
You really have to be prepared to do those kinds of things when you're shooting like this, because in some way storyboarding doesn't really do you a whole lot of good when you don't know where you're going to be shooting. You can draw out the shots that you want, but you know, they're not going to match. You're going to have to make it up as you go along once you get there.
Yeah, a certain amount of flexibility is probably a good thing. It's good to have the storyboards, but
well, the storyboards almost start to serve as more of a shot list instead of an actual setup that you're...
well, I was surprised in both the previous film and this film, many instances where I did storyboards for some of the scenes, didn't refer to them, but then discovered later when I reviewed the footage that I had shot basically almost exactly what I had storyboarded out. I guess storyboarding is a way to get the idea straight in your brain, and then when you get on the set you can wing it.
How much did you look back and say, oh, we missed something?
On
like
this,
an insert shot? Or
well, there were a couple of things that we missed, but actually we were pretty good on that. I mean, there were a couple of sequences where there were shots missing. It wasn't because we forgot to shoot them, it was because we didn't have the time to shoot them, or you know, there was a sort of compromise. We said, well, okay, we won't bother doing that because we can fix it in post. And there's quite a few shots that were sort of created in post. You know, taking a couple of Photoshop images and putting them together to create a shot that was missing.
Right.
But I think we're pretty good when you consider all the different shots in this movie.
Right. Well, because of the larger production and our time restraints and money restraints, it seemed like most of the time we were just performing triage. You know, what absolutely can be saved, what can be let go,
Right.
what can be changed. You did a lot of work on that shot, right, on the gore on that?
Yeah. Well, she did a good job. Actually, did the gore effect there, but we were. It's the problem with that sort of gelatin makeup is that it starts to come off, and as we go through shot take after take, little buckles and seams start to show up. So we had to play with the footage to try to hide some of that. That shot actually is a good example of a shot that was created completely in post.
Right.
Different pieces cobbled together.
Now with these fight sequences, it was tough because, you know, we don't get a lot of, you know, rehearsal, you know, to be able to make this work. So.
I remember when we were doing that, this was the first major action scene that we did in the film. And I remember how we kept going over the same thing over and over and over again. I think we're sort of getting used to how we were going to do it. Maybe it was a question simply making the actors comfortable with doing that sort of action stuff. I don't know if any of these people had any experience, except for Laurie, obviously, in doing any sort of physical action in films.
Well, the thing with this type of thing, people are tired. You know, there's a lot going on. You have zombie masks with limited visibility. There can be a lot of confusion on set. You know, repeating the action and making them feel comfortable, because if, you know, God forbid, if anyone got hurt, there were no injuries.
Right, and that's really a surprising thing when you stop and think about it. Something with all these people in a small, you know, limited location, and all the cables running around, the lights all over.
You know, this barn was not a set. This was something that we found, splinters of wood.
And here's Bashir's jump.
So, and we had 2 axes, one that we put together out of plastic mold, and then we actually had a real axe to insert in. And
that's the one, he's using the fake one there, because
really?
didn't want him to cleave anybody's head in half.
Right. So, and switching that out, and it was fun, because, you know, the light plastic one gave him the ability, and there he has the real one, right?
I imagine, yeah, probably swapped it out for the real one there.
It takes a lot of patience to be able to do these action sequences slowly, set the choreography, make sure everyone understands the language that's involved, you know, what the cues are.
And of course we originally wrote that scene so that there would be multiple bookcases covering all the windows, and we couldn't afford multiple bookcases, so it came down to one.
We never even shot the other side of that room, did we?
When they're putting the bookcase against the
well, the one that would be to the left there.
Oh no, we couldn't, because that actually had a grand piano there and an entrance to the rest of the house.
A grand piano that had to be moved around as it was, just for us to fit the
And actually the wall that they're up against there in this shot.
That's fake. That was blocking the doorway to their TV room.
And the glass was...
Oh, that was great post stuff.
Added in afterwards.
We held up a pane of glass with a C-stand, shot it against a black cloth, broke it, and Bill inserted the flying pieces of glass. I think it was a really great way of connecting those 2 scenes. I don't know if you want to talk about that. I mean, here, this is just...
That's all. Yeah. the belly ripping is stuff that was done many months later with obviously a fake Marcy.
Right. I really think that worked very well, because it was, again, to have them doing seesaw with her. Oh, that was great. And I love the shoe coming off there. That's
it's a nice pathetic touch.
A nice touch.
Yeah, we you know, in editing it originally, I didn't have any of those shots, and that was true for a couple of the scenes of violence. I edited the scene together without any of the explicit gore, but then decided later that we really needed to shoot that stuff to really make it very explicit, because I just don't, you know, I think not only in terms of the audience for this type of film, that's the sort of thing they're coming to see, but I also think you really have to drive it home. You know, the violence of the scene has to be very explicit in order to make the scene work.
Well, I think people also expect something. Yeah. There's a certain expectation when you go to see a film like this, and I think that falls within that.
You gotta keep people waiting for 40 minutes. They gotta see something.
Right. And I like this, Alex's character arc. You know, he's an actor, but he wanted to be an action hero, and you can see how he reluctantly goes into battle. He's not being some hero. He looks scared.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And he has good reason to be. blood squirts added in after the fact.
Right. I guess if someone was dead, the blood wouldn't squirt.
Probably not, no.
But he wasn't totally dead. He was only
He's on his way out. Yeah, you actually, if you play
partly
that,
dead.
if you play that shot back, you can see his face slowly turning pale from the loss of blood.
There you go.
So that's something.
It's those little details.
Little touches.
See, now we have the continuity issues of ripped shirts and fresh blood, and
Here we have the added books dropping.
oh yeah?
Yeah, these are all. We didn't have that many books. It's hard to fill a big room like that with books.
And some of the titles
We were shifting
you
the
were
books.
concerned with.
That's right. We had some titles
hiding.
that weren't appropriate for the theme of the movie.
So yeah, here we have this stunt coming up that took a little bit of that lattice. I mean, it's nice to see it from this long shot. Is actually attached to 2x4s at its base with pins in it to act like a hinge, so that the whole thing could be like a
And that
like
was
a ladder.
That was actually built. There was no lattice work on the side of the house.
Right.
That was all put in for the production.
That's probably the most extensive piece of scenery that was built, was that lattice work.
And we should mention, of course, that this is you playing the zombie in this sequence,
Right.
hanging on for dear life on the side of the building.
You can't ask someone to do something that you're not willing to do yourself.
Well, I have to say, this is really an example of going beyond the Call of Duty to put that sort of costume on and be willing to risk injury by climbing up the side of a building. You're not held on with any cables or anything. If you would let go, I imagine you would have suffered some injury.
And of course, Laurie and I have worked together on so many stunts for so long that, this was very easy for us to do. We understood ourselves. We understood each other. Ugh.
There's a big birthing scene.
That's horrible.
Hopefully it is, yes.
So the idea here is that once I was ready to do this fall, we would move it away, and that the lattice had to be able to fall, but not actually fall on me. So we actually built with horses, with wooden horses, something to catch, so that I would fall through to the mat.
Yeah,
but the lattice
mattresses
work
on it or cardboard box?
would actually land on the wooden framework, and I would fall past to the pad, so I didn't get.
And we shot this sequence with no baby on the set, no baby monster baby on the set. This was all done many months later in the Bronx. Yeah.
And that is Metamucil, but
Yeah, Metamucil heated and reheated until it turns into a sort of a plastic-like substance. Makes good slime. And the baby is actually, the puppet was done in front of a blue screen and added into these shots. We, the puppet is perhaps not as articulated as it could be or should be, but we are working on a low budget. Again, that was added in after the fact. Laurie never met that baby. That was all added in.
Perhaps that's for the best.
Probably so.
Even that was post, right?
That's all post as well. Yeah. That's not actually Laurie. And there we had some other doll or toy that they were using on the set.
It was a baby doll wrapped in cellophane.
Right. Yeah.
But she went to town on that. I mean, if you think about the circumstance that we shot that under, I can't believe that it cut together.
Yeah, those were difficult days. That was all shot towards the beginning of the shoot, and Alexis was getting down on the floor so frequently she actually had marks on her knees from kneeling on the hardwood floor.
Well, again, she really throws herself into it, literally.
Right.
Throws
In that
herself
case,
into
very
the
much.
full commitment.
And Laurie certainly gave us our money's worth in that scene as well. She was screaming and crying for a couple of hours that night, if I remember correctly.
Plus hanging out a window.
That's right, yeah. The upcoming sequence, we go back to the guest room, and one of my regrets as far as the lighting of the film was that we didn't shoot the scenes in the guest room a little darker. Tried to darken it in post, but I think at this point in the film everything should be very dark and moody, and it's probably overlit. But that's, you know, no film is perfect.
You don't really get an idea for how small this room is to shoot this. We had to, I mean, Bill couldn't even be behind the camera because Bill was the camera operator. He was the camera operator and the director, so he was, you know, he couldn't even get behind the camera. We had to put the camera up against the wall here and look at it from the side, right? You had to look at it through the monitor.
Right.
And the lights, you know, the equipment, the soundboard.
Well, making a film, even what I suppose a lot of people would consider a fairly inconsequential piece of escapist entertainment, is a tremendous job. It's an extraordinary amount of work that goes into making even something that would be considered minor. And the physical effort that goes into it and the mental effort that goes into it is really, you know, it's more work than I've ever done, that's for sure.
Right.
It's the most exhausting experience that I've had.
But, you know, really, the script was designed correctly. You know, although there were challenges to have one house, basically two locations.
Yeah,
you know, if you would have designed this any differently, then, you know, we wouldn't have crossed the finish line.
That's the mistake we made on the first film, and of course the first film took years to complete. I'm surprised that it is completed now. You know, I've probably still got a couple of scenes we should be shooting. But this film, the whole idea was to respond to the mistakes we made in the first production, and putting it all in a central location, putting all the action in one place, was the first step towards, you know, demonstrating that we had learned our lesson. This house was a discovery that was made fairly late in the game. We were just a week or two away from canceling the whole thing because we couldn't find a place to shoot it.
Right. And it was one of those, you know, having faith that you just keep moving forward and somehow a way will be found. And it wasn't for a lack of looking.
No?
It was just one of those things that finding a house on a piece of wooded property just ended up being harder to find than we had ever anticipated. The decision had to be made at some point to either move forward or cancel the whole thing.
And the requirements of a horror film, you have to have the characters isolated, and so finding that house was really essential, you know, key to the success of the project.
I love the red carpet. That was classic.
The red carpet is definitely a Hammer Films touch, I think. And they always seem to have something red in the castles and laboratories that appear in those films. And the glow, the greenish glow around all the demons, that was all added in post, obviously. Had to be more or less animated frame by frame, which was a rather daunting task. I'm going to try to avoid having any such things in my next film.
Well, our mantra during the shooting of this was no more rubber monsters.
No more rubber monsters, right? They require too much care and feeding.
Kill them! Kill them all! Kill them all!
But I guess the zombies are pretty successful. They manage to have a sort of retro look. They bring to mind the Tombs of the Blind Dead zombies, but they also have a certain amount of character, sort of quality of their own that makes them memorable, I think. They're not realistic, I don't think, but they're fun.
Right.
Look.
This was a tough sequence. Getting the timing of all this right.
Yes, and trying to make it look convincing that that bookcase had any weight to it. It's a pretty flimsy item.
Ah, the magic of filmmaking.
And here we are coming up to another gore shot that was done many months later.
I think this is pretty entertaining here. Is this thing on?
Yeah.
That was Caroline getting smashed in the face.
And more superimposed glass. So I think this sequence probably would play a lot better if we'd gotten slightly moodier lighting.
Steven.
Stuff like that, you know, building little breakaway windows ourselves, and
yeah, it adds enormously to the feel of the thing. That makes it look like it's a lot more than what it is.
That doesn't work.
I think this part of the film, you know, things start to come together, you know, the little clues and everything that were given before, as far as, you know, you have to use your own blood, and, you know, the idea that they're going to use the spell to benefit them, but the only one who knows is dead, you know, good stuff.
Can you read this?
Well, the idea that everybody is suffering as a result of a mistake that Grace made, and her humiliation, seeing her friends, people that came out to help her, getting killed horribly, including her lover, makes this fairly potent. She has to bring him back from the dead, make him suffer a little more.
No.
Shouldn't she have died?
No.
No.
Well, I don't know. I tried to avoid any sort of concept of poetic justice, that, you know, the characters were dying because they deserved to die. The only person in this movie that deserves to die is Toth. But these other folks are just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Well, in all fairness, she does try to sacrifice herself.
Right.
Denton just doesn't let her.
Right. They all start off initially demonstrating their human weakness. They exhibit cowardice, but then as the film goes on, they all rise to the occasion and demonstrate courage and self-sacrifice. Each one of them, actually, with the exception of Marcy, who unfortunately doesn't have the, you know, she
didn't have the time to go through.
Well, she's a child, I guess. She's emotionally immature.
Well, I guess Mike too. Then, I mean,
Well, he's a hero. He tries to save his wife, and he ends up dying as a result. Alex jumps to Marcy's defense and ends up getting killed. Stephen
totally sacrifices himself
so he can get the grimoire to Denton.
So here's another prop
This
So
is
there goes Jerry.
Wood,
And he bangs his heels on the top of the roof. You don't see that.
He did a little injury to himself in that fall.
No, nothing can hurt Jerry.
Well, you did a fall as well, but we couldn't work it into the edit.
What the hell?
Yeah, maybe we'll save it for the sequel. But it actually is in the making of documentary.
Oh, thanks.
So it was not in vain.
So that's he rips off a piece of banister, and we had to make a prop weapon out of a piece of foam, all the way down to a nail that a foam nail sticking out of it that I don't know if it actually you could see it. And we just told him wail on us. I think you see someone flinch at one point, though. I don't know.
I think one of my regrets in that sequence is that we didn't have breakaway zombies,
right.
Mannequins that we.
Well, that was the idea, but there is originally, right?
Yeah. It would have been nice to see some of the zombies getting damaged.
Pulverized, right? Like the one that kills Alex, he gets his hand knocked off.
Right, yeah. But I guess that was something that was just sacrificed for time and money reasons.
We talked about all the different ways we could have done it. Somehow making thin plaster molds, or
well, all of those things could have been done, I'm sure, and they probably would have been pretty effective, but it would have added enormously to the shooting schedule, because you have to have all of your actors standing around while you're doing that stuff, if they're actually interacting with the thing, unless you go in for close-ups all the time, which gets to be a little monotonous. This stuff outdoors, out in the front of the house, we shot twice as well, for the same reasons, or because of the same problem that we had with the earlier outdoor sequence, electricity and lighting problems. Second time we did it, we got it right. Now these superimposed explosions are just about the only way I could think of to sort of get these zombie characters off the stage, just having them explode. I would have liked to have had them ignite into flames, but that would have been a difficult thing to do on set. All the debris and the little pock marks.
craters. Yeah, I never noticed that before.
Added all in post.
And then he blows up the car.
That would have been funny. And I don't know whose car. That was Laurie's car, if I'm not mistaken. I think
we got fake blood.
Fake blood all over the interior of the car, which pleased her enormously.
Different recipes for fake blood. Some of it was a cornstarch base. Others was a baby shampoo base, like in case that got in his eyes. And unfortunately, the blood that got in her car was was the corn base, which doesn't wash out as well.
Well,
we all had to sacrifice. Laurie sacrificed her car. And I'm sure the people who own the house are still finding the remnants of us shooting there. Stains on the carpet, scrapes on the wall. And actually, Damien was sick here. He was coming down with something.
everybody was coming down with something towards the end of the shoot, I think, from standing out in the night air for hours. So I think we all probably had bronchitis or bad colds after the shoot was over.
Well, most of the crew were probably only averaging 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night.
Right. Actually, the cast probably had the benefit there. They were, you know, they were able to get full night's sleep if they chose to do so.
Right.
Whether or not they did, I don't know, but
I'm sure actor housing was an interesting place.
A place to be, apparently,
Right.
yes.
That's good if people can work on one of our films and have a really good time, make new friends.
Yeah,
you know.
If it's not a pleasant experience, then probably it's not worth doing.
Yeah. Well, frequently we had to remind ourselves, you know, remember this is supposed to be fun.
Supposed to be fun.
It's
right?
supposed to be fun.
Yeah. Well, we want it to be commercial, but when a movie is budgeted as you know, as low as this, you don't have to be that big a success in order to make back your investment. So having it be an educational experience and a fun experience is certainly important.
Zazzo and his very imposing presence.
Now, originally the script called for Toth and his assistant to drive off in a limousine, and the friends jump out in front of the limousine and cause it to crash, and then they
all die and
they hold Toth in the car as it burns.
Inferno.
Right? Surprisingly, we weren't able to do that on our budget. So I went back to the drawing board and rewrote the ending, and I think that actually is a better ending as a result of our rewriting it.
Right. And that grimoire you can find on sale at eBay.
Yeah. I'm surprised it managed to make it through the shoot. It was practically in tatters from all the rough handling it got. And that actually is Joe Zazzo's car. Not the one he's in, but the red car was actually his car. He donated it to the production for the few days that we needed it.
And again, all this stuff, one or two takes.
Right. This must have been very close to like the night before the last night of the shoot.
Well, everything on Frank's property was that last weekend. There was a lot of little production value stuff, little bits of the archaeological dig that never got shown.
In these shots, I tried to increase the dramatic impact by slightly distorting the picture so that Damien would look approximately Will's height.
That's interesting.
Because Will is about 6'2", I would guess. And Damien is not quite as tall.
They were all troopers during this, sitting covering themselves with dirt.
Yeah, and that makeup is no fun to wear.
Right.
Apparently.
And yeah, it's all sticky. And some of them had to go home on the train with not cleaning up a whole lot.
Well, I know Laurie told me she had to take a couple of rides home with her makeup on, and she got some odd looks from people as she drove by. And this actually was shot with a stationary automobile, balancing it and waving branches in front of the lights to create an illusion of movement. So it was a lot easier to do that than to actually go out on the road with the car. We did that as well, but the results were not what we needed. So we reshot the scene with a parked car and superimposed the passing scenery into the windows. Of course, the man who was responsible for getting the production up and running and financing it and keeping everything afloat was Frank. And Frank, in addition to his duties as a producer of the film, was, you know, really very hands-on in terms of getting in there and helping out with whatever needed to be done. And, you know, the film obviously could not have been made without Frank's involvement and without his diligence and his ability to push the thing forward and get those things that needed to be done. And Ed, I should mention how valuable you were to the production. Really, my right-hand man in terms of managing the production and keeping things running smoothly. And it would have been very difficult for me to do what I was doing if I hadn't had somebody like yourself out in front, you know, clearing the path for me. You have my appreciation, both of you have my thanks for your help on this.
Thanks, Bill.
And thank you for your help on this audio commentary.
Good times.
So we'll try to make another movie in the coming years.
And no more rubber monsters.
And no more rubber. We'll see if we stick to that. I don't know.
All right. Well, thanks, Bill.
Thank you, sir. See you on the next one.